Okay, this is one for true metalheads. And they'll know when I do that with my mouth. And go, you take a mortal man and put him in control. Watch him become a god. And people's heads a roll. While they're watching, is it?
What the hell was that?
Yeah, that exactly.
What was that?
That's a guy called Dave Mustaine. And Dave Mustaine has a band called Megadeth, which I think is possibly the worst and the best name in metal music ever. Megadeth.
Yes.
But he's a fucking idiot. But he was the first guitarist in Metallica. And he got sacked because he was an alcoholic, and Kirk Hammett came in, which is interesting because Kirk Hammett, in my opinion, is the worst guitarist in metal music. But he was a guitar student of Steve Vai, who's obviously a phenomenal guitarist. But you remember Peter Green?
Of course.
Yeah.
Recorded a bunch of stuff with him.
You did, yeah. We did at the Wickham Swan. You and I recorded it, their live performance at the Wickham Swan when he was with Splinter Group.
I've just booked tickets to go and see a Fleetwood Mac tribute band.
Cut.
Girlfriend loves it.
Yeah. It was just a rumour. So he bought. Obviously, there's a big trade in vintage guitars, and Kirk Hammett ended up with Peter Green's 1959 Les Paul.
Yep.
Right. Fucking sacrilege. My favourite guitarist, Peter Green. It's an amazing guitar. It's famous because it's got out-phase humbucker on it, because he fixed it himself and wired it up backwards, and it gives it this special sound of when Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac and these the sort of early recordings, and now Kirk Hammett has this guitar, and I see him on stage. They're doing these fucking enormous shows as a 60-year-old shit metal guitarist playing fucking Peter Green's 1959 Les Paul. It drives me absolutely to distraction that he's playing pretty cool songs very badly on my favourite guitarist. Amazing guitar. Richie Sambora, I think, owned this guitar. This is just a bloke said down the pub fact. Apparently, Richie Sambora owned this guitar for a while. It's priceless, you know. It sort of changes hands, and somebody went round to value it, and he'd signed it in Sharpie because he thought it would add value.
Jesus.
If it had his name on it, well, had a couple of grand, wouldn't it? Yeah. You kind of missed metal music, didn't you, of that sort of era?
I did. Wasn't really my bag.
No, it wasn't.
And I said, just before we started filming this, I said, we're going to talk about metal again. I've only got one metal story, and I'm not going to tell it again. But then I didn't realise you were going to talk about Megadeth. And the only metal band I've ever worked with in the studio is Megadeth.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So you've met Dave Mustaine. It doesn't sound like that, but he's got a horrible mouth. He's so bitter.
I don't think I met him. I did a day because someone was off sick or whatever, and I literally recorded kick drums.
Did you? Yeah.
That's all I did.
Yeah. Well, they would have been the old wooden beater with the 2p sort of double kick.
We spent the whole day trying to match.
Yeah, two kick drums. Yeah. They're very funny because in that particular song, Symphony of Destruction, amazing bass line. It's one of those dug 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 dug. Anyway, some of you will find that interesting. Some of you will find it completely.
I was going to say, whoever it was that commented a couple of weeks ago says, "I wish you guys would do more chat before you start the reviews." They're regretting that now. Dan's off. Falls asleep in some episodes, can't shut him up in others.
I think it's important to have a broad spectrum of
there's definitely a broad spectrum.
Right. Anyway, so why are we here?
I've forgotten. Don't know. We are here, Dan, because today we are reviewing the Relab development Sonsig Rev A. Any idea what that might be?
A reverb?
It is a reverb.
Hooray! Oh, we don't do many reverbs.
We don't. We're doing quite a few at the moment.
We are. Yeah,
there's a whole bunch.
Yeah, we've got one later, haven't we?
We have. Yeah.
Okay.
So Relab obviously brought us the 480 lexicon modelled whatever it was.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I use a lot. Yeah. That thing is amazing. A lot of people love it. They've also just brought out like a System 6000, the TC thing. Haven't tried that. It's more for movie mixing and stuff, but that looks interesting. But yeah, they've dropped this thing, the Sonsig Rev A. Not sure where the name comes from. I'm sure someone will tell us. And it's got to be said, it's a really interesting thing. It's an algorithmic reverb, so it's not convolution. You don't load in your what do you call it? What do we call those things?
Pardon?
What are the things you load into convolution
Where it goes,
reverb? Yeah.
Measure the. Come on, we should know this because we're sounding.
We do know this, but it's just gone out of our heads. Anyway, whatever. It's not that. So first thing to say, it's an original design. It's not based on a particular old reverb. However, there are, as you can see down the bottom here, from these 3 buttons, there are 3 sort of flavors you can have it in. You can have it in the first one, which is QRS mode, which I think is based on the Quadset QRS, which is kind of a grittier sounding reverb. 224 mode, obviously the Lexicon 224 XL, very lush vocal reverbs. And then there's the Rev A, which is an original sounding, but it's very clean sort of version. The interface I really like. Obviously this right hand side, some brilliant meters, really nice, tells you the time, tells you the blend. You got your in and your out controls, and then big knobs at the top there. We like a big knob.
We do. Yeah,
so you got your time and you've got your size. And someone, I don't know who it was.
The size
recently,
of a big knob.
The size. So the size, how big the room is basically, and time, how long that reverb decays for. And then in the middle you got a freeze button. A lot of reverbs are doing this these days. I don't really use it, but it's something you can automate in the mix. If you freeze a reverb, it just instantly freezes whatever the size of the reverb and just keeps going infinitely until you unfreeze it, which is an interesting effect.
Well, like a
yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's an interesting.
Good with the side chain, I'd imagine. Actually.
Yeah, you could do some interesting stuff with it. You've got a character selector, 3 different characters for each reverb. Ensemble, again, 10 different levels. Nice to have.
Is that a sort of chorusy vibe? Is that like a modulation effect?
Yeah, similar. It's just adding layers, I guess.
Right.
Your pre-delay, really useful. You can click the little thing which makes it snap to tempo.
Okay.
Sometimes useful for drums. A brightness control and a high decay. It's quite nice to have that control over a reverb. The diffusion is basically sort of how thick it is when it reflects. The tilt, high and low, really useful. Don't see much of that on reverbs. And then just a low tilt. Again, in reverb, you quite often want to get rid of the low end.
I was going to say, actually, because the brightness there, because obviously they call it, it's the Abbey Road trick, isn't it, with the high pass and the low pass?
Yeah, high pass and low pass.
So it doesn't interfere. And something else I learned years ago is actually EQing. So if you're EQing a synthesizer, for example, if you're adding reverb to a synth patch, you actually EQ out the predominant frequency of the synthesizer patch out of the reverb.
Yeah, that can work. Yeah.
So it's interesting, but anyway, so the brightness is, I wouldn't often have brightness on a reverb.
Well, I guess it's, for certain, like on a vocal, if you're using a really lush Lexicon style reverb, to be able to adjust how bright that is, just saves putting an EQ after it, I guess. Where do we get to? Width down the bottom. Again, nice. It's quite often interesting to stick a reverb return into mono. It can really clutter a mix of reverb, and I think it's definitely true to say that the reverb you pick very much affects the overall sound of your mix. So pick a reverb carefully and adjust the width. Sometimes a mono reverb just gets out of the way. Yeah, it's a really interesting trick to do. I did a mix recently where I put all the backing vocals in mono.
Did you? Yeah. Well, the actual BVs.
The actual BVs
in mono.
I summed it all to mono. Yeah. It just I was getting such weird problems with getting them to sit, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to put a whole lot of mono, and it really worked.
Sat behind the vocal,
and then you got your blend, wet and dry. Simple as.
Do you think they've designed this for a specific kind? Is it a generic reverb, or have they designed it for a specific idea?
I think they've designed this to be your workhorse reverb. Right. This is the reverb you just have permanently set up an aux 1. Yep. It's part of your template.
You get something happening pretty quick, wouldn't you, with it?
Especially
once you'd got a sound.
And I love the fact that you could have like 2 or 3 inserted on aux returns, and you could have a drum set up, you could have a vocal set up. You've got the different flexibility there to be able to do that.
Because a lot of them got very complex, didn't they? I mean, space designers and all that kind of stuff with it. There's all sorts of controls. I very rarely use any controls that aren't, the controls that are on there.
Yep. Yeah, I've got into doing certain things. I quite often, like very short ambient reverb followed by a lusher one on a vocal. I think that sounds great. Putting the reverb, putting the vocal in a room, a small room, and then adding a bigger reverb to it.
Yeah, I mean, I do that with all of my sprinkly, because obviously I do a lot of dance stuff. All of the sprinkly stuff that you want to lift off your bass line and off of your drums. I always, really short reverb, and it just lifts it out of your mix a bit.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing when you're teaching people in mixing, isn't it? Is that if you use pan to put things left and right, but if you want to put things back and forwards, it's reverb.
Yeah.
It's reverb that does it.
Yeah. Oh, very cool, very cool. So, anything? Where do we get it?
It's Relab Development, so just put Relab Development into Google and
it'll come up.
Go, yeah.
And demo?
Demo's 7 days, which is fine.
Half an hour, EP?
Half an album for Dan. Yeah. How much do you reckon it is? Have you already snuck a look?
No, I haven't snuck a look actually. I know what I want it to be. There's a difference, isn't there? Always. I'd like it to be in
Free.
the 30 to 40. Yeah, well, 30 to 40 quid kind of band.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's $149.
Yeah.
Usually. In the sale right now, $99.
Yeah. You see, I don't tend to mix big lush. I know your vocal production is one of your fortes, isn't it? So you're big on these big sort of lush reverbs, whereas I'm like, right, fuck it, that'll do. Kind of reverb user. So what do you think about the price?
I think I use Chrome Reverb, the basic Logic reverb, a lot. That quite often I will end up using that on drums.
Yeah.
And then I'll pick something nicer for the vocal.
Yeah.
I think if I was to move away from that, and I might want to do that for an album, I'd need something like this to be my go-to reverb for the whole album. Maybe I'm going to use it on everything. And I think 99 quid for that.
Yeah.
That's good.
I guess that's a good way of looking at it. If you've got a project come in and you were thinking, right, this is a slightly different project, or this is maybe it's your next step up in mixing and stuff, and you think, I want a go-to reverb for this project, and you'd maybe have a short list of 4 or 5 reverbs, this would be worth having on that short list. And if it was if you got on well with controls and it sounded good, you might consider spending that kind of money on it.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to do as well, is that when you're working on an album or a project, maybe that's the time where you go and buy a couple of key plugins and they're going to help you define the sound of that. Yeah.
I guess it's sort of reinvesting back into your stock, into your kit, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're good at that, whereas I spend mine on beer. Anyway. Did.
Yeah.
Not
You're
anymore.
a new man now.
I am. Yeah, I am. Yeah, this week.
For this week.
Okay, so you've done it again. The Relab Development Sonsig Rev A, Sean.
Yes.
Is it shit?
No, I really, really like it.
Excellent stuff.
I wish it was a little bit cheaper, but I think the $99 is fair.
Okay, good. Brilliant stuff. Well, there we go. Another one in the bag. We'll zip that up and lock it and throw away the key, and then you can like the video, please.
Or subscribe to the channel, or become a channel member. The highest level of channel membership means you get 1 free master a month.
We've got an Instagram Studio Life 101 because lots of people like social media. It's the newfangled thing, apparently.
What else? Patreon, merch store, details about the mixing course, a whole bunch of stuff.
All down there.
All down there.
Click the link. But until next time, sayonara.
Adios.